All right, today we're diving into something pretty intense, a rare but really serious neurological condition called transverse myelitis. It can pop up out of nowhere with shocking speed. So let's break down what that actually is.
So, let's start with this question. What happens when your own body attacks your spinal cord? Seriously, think about that for a second. The very system designed to protect you, your immune system, gets confused and turns on the superhighway of nerves that connects your brain to, well, everything else. This isn't science fiction, folks. It's the reality of an autoimmune attack, and it's the core of what transverse myelitis is all about.
Okay, to really get a grip on this, we're going to tackle it in 4 parts. First, we'll look at why this is considered a true emergency. Then we'll dive into the nitty-gritty of the internal battle happening inside the body. After that, we'll see how doctors figure out what's going on, how they decode the diagnosis. And finally, we'll talk about the path to recovery, which is tough, but definitely full of hope.
All right, first up, a spinal cord emergency. And I really want you to focus on that word emergency, because this isn't something that creeps up on you over years. Nope, this often hits fast and hard, and it means you need medical help, like right now.
So what is transverse myelitis, or TM for short? The best way to think about it is this. Your spinal cord is like the body's main data cable, right? It sends all the messages from your brain to your limbs, your organs, everything. Well, in TM, your immune system launches this full-on attack against one specific section of that cable. This causes a ton of inflammation, which basically creates a massive roadblock, and all those critical nerve signals get scrambled or just stopped.
Now, you might be hearing this and thinking, wow, that sounds incredibly rare. And you're not wrong. We're talking about maybe 1 to 8 cases per million people every year. Super rare. But for the people it does happen to, the sudden and really severe symptoms make it a personal, life-altering neurological crisis.
So that brings us to our next section, the body's internal battle. We know the immune system is the culprit here, attacking the spinal cord. But what does that attack actually look like on the inside? What's going on at a biological level?
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting. The whole process happens in a few stages. First, you get inflammation. Immune cells just rush into the spinal cord where they don't belong. Then comes step 2, and this is the big one, demyelination. The myelin sheath is this protective coating around your nerve fibers. Think of it like the plastic insulation on an electrical wire. The immune system starts stripping that insulation away. And what happens when you have bare wires? They short circuit. That leads to swelling or edema, which blocks the signals even more. And in the worst cases, you can get necrosis, which means the tissue actually starts to die. That damage can be permanent. And you can see how that short-circuiting leads directly to the symptoms people feel. If the motor signals are disrupted, you get weakness or even paralysis. Sensory signals get blocked. That can cause numbness, tingling, or this really distinct thing called a sensory level. It's like a line is drawn across your body, and below that line you can't feel anything. And because the spinal cord handles all the automatic stuff, you can lose bladder and bowel control. On top of all that, it can be incredibly painful. Sharp, shooting pains, or just intense back pain. Okay, with symptoms this dramatic and all over the place, you can imagine how crucial it is to get a fast, accurate diagnosis. And that brings us to section 3, decoding the diagnosis. This is where doctors become detectives, trying to figure out exactly what's attacking the body and why. One of the first things they do is classify how bad the attack is. Is it acute complete TM? That's where the inflammation goes all the way across a section of the spinal cord, causing symptoms on both sides of the body, pretty symmetrically. Or is it partial TM? That's where it only hits part of the cord, leading to more lopsided, asymmetric symptoms. And that distinction is really important because partial TM can be a big clue that something like multiple sclerosis might be involved. So to figure all this out, doctors have a whole toolkit they use. An MRI of the spine is a must. It lets them actually see the inflammation, the lesion. But just as important, it helps them rule out something else, like a tumor pressing on the cord. They'll also often do an MRI of the brain, looking for telltale signs of MS. Then there's a lumbar puncture, or spinal tap, where they check the spinal fluid for signs of this inflammation. And finally, blood tests can look for specific antibodies that might point to other autoimmune conditions.
And this is a really crucial point. Getting a diagnosis of transverse myelitis isn't always the end of the story. Sometimes it's a one-and-done, isolated event. But for a lot of people, it's actually the first big red flag for a bigger, chronic condition. That's because the kind of damage we're talking about, that demyelination, the stripping of the nerve insulation, is also the main feature of diseases like multiple sclerosis or neuromyelitis optica. So this sudden attack might be the first time one of those underlying diseases makes itself known.
All right, let's get to what is probably the most important part of this whole story,
Once you know what you're dealing with, the focus shifts immediately to how do you fight back? And that takes us to our final section, the path to recovery.
In the immediate, acute phase, the #1 goal is to hit the brakes on the immune system's attack, and fast. The first weapon of choice is usually high-dose corticosteroids, given through an IV, to bring that inflammation down quickly. Now, if the attack is really severe, or if the steroids aren't working, doctors might move to something called plasma exchange, or PLEX. It's basically a process that filters the bad, attack-causing antibodies right out of your blood. IVIG is another option that can help get the immune system back in line.
But here's the thing. Stopping the attack is just the first battle. As this quote makes crystal clear, rehabilitation is crucial for functional recovery. The real long-term work begins after the inflammation is under control. This part is absolutely essential.
And recovery takes a whole team. You've got physiotherapy to help you literally get back on your feet, rebuilding strength, balance, mobility. Occupational therapy helps you relearn all the activities of daily life that you might now struggle with. Pain management is huge because that nerve pain can stick around. And so important is psychological support. Going through something that's sudden and life-altering takes a massive emotional toll. So, what does the future hold after an attack of TM? Well, the prognosis is often explained with this rule of thirds. About a third of people have a really good recovery, getting back to pretty much normal. Another third have a partial recovery. They get better but are left with some lasting issues. And then, unfortunately, about a third have a poor recovery with severe long-term disability. And that's why getting that early, aggressive treatment is so critical. It can really make a difference in which group you end up in.
When you step back and look at it, the story of transverse myelitis really has 3 parts, doesn't it? There's the sudden, terrifying attack. Then there's the fierce medical battle to fight back. And finally, there's this incredible long journey of human resilience. It's just a powerful reminder of how delicate the balance inside our own bodies really is. And it makes you wonder, what other secrets is our own immune system hiding?